Good day and welcome to installment number 2 of the Gritty Tales Writing Vlog. I am your host, as always, Tyler M Mathis, freelance fiction writer and master of the gritty tale. So today we're going to be discussing what it takes to be a writer and whether you have what it takes to be a writer. That's the most important consideration on your side of this camera. There's this notion that is particularly popular in most social media writing groups that just anyone can become a writer. All they have to do is sit in a chair and just try, just keep writing, and eventually you're going to get it. In other words, anyone can do it. Now, I'm not here to bust anyone's bubble. If you like writing, write, okay? Knock yourself out. Writing can be therapeutic. Whether it's fiction, you've got stories in your head, whether you're journaling, whatever the case. Fine. Go ahead. It's, you're a free individual. You have the right to write. No one here is trying to take that away from you. But if you're interested in publishing your work, whether it's traditional through a publisher or self-publishing, you need to ask yourself whether you have talent, whether you are really a writer or have the potential to become one. And it's a very difficult question, as we're going to get into right here. So let's start by considering the statement, one of the statements I opened with, that just anyone can be a writer. The minute you decide to put your work out there in the marketplace, writing is no longer a hobby or a pastime. It becomes a business. And writers are professionals. Okay? That's very important. I cannot stress that enough. The writer is a professional. So, just everyone can be a writer if they work hard enough. All right? Now, let's take that statement and replace the word writer with a blank. Now let's fill in that blank with another profession. So everyone can be a professional athlete, an attorney, a rocket scientist, an actor, a musician. We'll go with those 5. Is any of that true? Can just anyone hit a baseball 450 feet if they practice at it long enough? By standards, writing is judged by. Why wouldn't they be able to? How about, can a person become a lawyer or a rocket scientist, just one day because they decide to do it? They're willing it into reality. Acting, thousands upon thousands of people, go to Los Angeles every year. Even today, just with that dream of becoming an actor. How many of them make it? About 1/10 of 1%, 1/100th. Music, same deal. I haven't watched American Idol in I don't know how long, but I remember the auditions. You've got thousands of people auditioning, and a handful get picked. And basically, hopefully you're beginning to see now how absurd, this notion that just anyone can become a writer really is. You insert any of those other professions into that blank space, and that statement becomes absolutely ridiculous, because every profession has a specific skill set, and writing, is no exception, of course. And not just anyone can do it. In fact, very few people have the potential to become serious writers. So the question here is whether you have what it takes to become a serious writer. So what is the root of this mistaken notion that just anyone can become a writer? Well, I believe it's because just about everyone in the civilized world is taught basic writing in school. That is enough writing for them to write an email or perform basic, clerical duties, writing term papers at college level, things like that. And the foundations of other professions, however, are not taught as mandatory courses in basic education. But since everyone knows, or basically everyone knows, how to write, people think that, that automatically extends into an ability to write books professionally and sell them. Well, if you peruse the opening samples in damn near every self-published book on Amazon, just pick one at random. You learn quickly that that's not the case. Like I said, you don't even have to buy the book. Just they all have like little 10-page samples that you can read for free. And when you read them, you'll notice certain things. Like for one, they're poorly written. They're horribly formatted. Usually typos and construction errors, kind of everywhere. And those are the books that flood the self-publishing market. By these alleged writers who put out, these horrible books that will never recoup, provided they were even professionally formatted, which most of them weren't. But they'll never recoup the cost of publishing, the cover art, whatever. They're just not really going to sell. And on the traditional side, these same people are submitting to traditional publishers and to agents, and they're flooding their inboxes with these stories that are just poorly edited garbage. And it makes it that much harder for actual writers to become traditionally published, which is a problem. Basically, for people who are the real deal, it makes everyone's life harder. Now, you don't want to be one of these faux writers. Who wants to be a wannabe? Because for one, they embarrass themselves by putting this shitty work up for sale. Their names are tarnished because readers automatically know when they read those first few pages that, the author is not legit. He's just not an author. He's not real. He's the literary equivalent of that guy who auditions for American Idol in some outrageous costume. He's the Statue of Liberty or whoever. Goes up there and makes an ass out of himself, is looking for attention, but he has no singing talent, and he knows he doesn't. But he's going to do it anyway because that's his dream. Well, not everyone's a singer. That's plainly obvious. We need to realize that not everyone's a writer as well. So as I said above, a writer requires a skill set to become successful. So what I'm going to do now is go over 4 traits that I believe, most talented writers share. Successful trait number 1, a working knowledge of language. Seems like a no-brainer, right? How the hell can someone tell a story without the ability to properly communicate? It just doesn't work. I have no idea, how they can do that. But I guess ask one of the tens of thousands of authors, who for some reason decide to work in English despite, lacking, education in the English language. Now, I'm not going to go into why these people decide to publish in English. That's a topic for another day. I'll just say that they're bucking to do the impossible. In my own case, for example, I took German in high school and college, 3 years, I believe. And I would never, in my wildest dreams, consider writing a novel in Hochdeutsch, or in Low German for that matter, because I'm just not proficient in German, I couldn't do it. And even if let's say I did become, highly fluent in German, it would take me several years of writing in German in order to, consider myself proficient enough to write a novel in German. I mean, now we look at it in English. I mean, to think that a person, with just the barest knowledge of English, is going to be able to write a novel in English that's going to sell, that they're, going to perpetrate and get paid to do so. I mean, it's the height of absurdity. I mean, that's not what how it works. And yet, I mean, look at all the people trying to do it. They fail every time, not surprisingly. So if you're one of these people, either write in your native language or be prepared to spend many, many more years learning how to write in English and becoming proficient. And likewise, even if you're a native English speaker, by no means, does that automatically give you, the ability to write in English properly. I mean, yeah, okay, you were taught in school, wonderful. Trust me, they don't teach you how to write fiction in basic English classes. It just doesn't happen. They teach you how to write basically. So, even if, in both cases, even if you brush up on your English for a while, I mean, you still might not have what it takes to write because you need, other attributes as well, such as, which brings us to trait number 2, natural talent. People who succeed in any profession have an innate knack for it on some level. I mean, and it's something you can't buy. You either have it or you don't. But in writing, it's difficult to discover whether you have natural talent. It's very hard to do a self-evaluation, and it's hard to be evaluated by others as well, which we'll get into for a second. A new author, all right, he writes a book or he writes a short story or whatever. The first thing he's going to do is ask his family and friends to read it. And he's likely going to be seriously disappointed when most of them don't read it, which is a topic for another time. A lot of writers go through that. But regarding those who do, their family and their friends read their story, and, sorry, just checking to make sure the mic was still on. The family and friends read the story. What are they going to say? Are they going to tell you that your book, sucks, that it absolutely blows goats? No, they're going to tell you it's great, whether it's great or not, because they don't want to hurt your feelings. So do not judge yourself off of what your family and friends may think of your work, and unless they're industry professionals, they have no friggin' clue, how well you write. There is only one way to find out if you have natural talent. You have to write a story and submit it for critique, to an industry professional, someone like myself, for example, a developmental editor, successful author, or you submit it to an editor at a legit publication, an editor or an agent, who will submit for you if he thinks that your work is good enough to be published. It's the only way. I mean, I questioned my talent until I got a story published. That's when I knew that I, was truly a real deal, and not just some dude who with a dream who just wanted to, write for a living. There's no other way to judge, because writing isn't like singing or acting or sports, those professions where spectators can tell with, just a mere listen or a glance, how talented the performer is. I mean, we know a shitty singer, at the first note practically. Writing, it's not so easy. So, you need to be evaluated by a pro who is fit to judge your talent. And that will, help, that will basically establish, whether you have that natural talent in you. Successful writers trait number 3, fortitude. Now, if you're a writer, I shouldn't have to explain what fortitude means to you. You should already know. Basically, in a nutshell, it's mental toughness. I'll go to the official dictionary.com definition right now, just to make it official. Fortitude, noun, mental and emotional strength in facing difficulty, adversity, danger or temptation courageously. Okay, so that's fortitude. Now, fortitude comes into play because it's the difference between, a guy who decides to write a book and doesn't make it past chapter 2. He just doesn't have what it takes to finish. And an actual writer who plans a project meticulously and sees it through to the end. Not just writing, pardon me, not just writing the book, but making painstaking revisions afterward in, a couple of drafts at least. Some people go way overboard with it, I think. We'll talk about that sometime. It also helps because writing is a heartbreaking business. I mean, to quote the late Louis Grizzard, writing, it will rip your heart out and stomp that sucker flat. And you will slave and toil on something for years and not find a market for it. There is no bigger letdown, nothing tougher than that. And if you don't have fortitude, you're going to break. You're going to say to hell with it, and you're going to move on, which is probably a good thing, because you don't have the fortitude, you just don't have what it takes. So, you're never going to make it unless you have or you can develop the fortitude to just keep marching and keep working, no matter how, how bad things get, how big that workload is. You've got to keep going, and if you can't, you're done. And now we move on to the 4th and final trait. A writer must be well read. In his book on writing, Stephen King says, and I'm paraphrasing, if you don't have the time to read, you don't have the time or the tools to write. That is the most sage advice in all of fiction, because how can you have an idea of how to write a story if you haven't read that many, or in some cases if you've never read one? And reading other authors teaches us what works and what fails in fiction, not only in regard to the overall story, but the way the story is constructed, plotted, and paced. We learn from other authors, we watch how they develop their characters and whether they succeed, whether their characters are true to life or whether they're just cardboard likenesses, of people. We take tips on, from the authors we enjoy. We look at how they did it, say, hey, I like how he sets up. I like, how he puts his, backstory, a couple of chapters away from the beginning instead of bombarding us all with it at the beginning. Stuff like that, just little tips you can pick up, by reading. And likewise, the authors that we read where their books suck, their stories suck, they don't know how to construct it. And you'd be amazed how many there are, even in mainstream published books. They're just not that good. Those authors get published for a variety of reasons. That's a topic for another day. But basically, by reading other authors, we learn what works and what doesn't, and it helps us, and it is essential, at least in my opinion. So, if you're a non-reader you know, you're gonna have a really tough go of it. And don't think for a moment that analyzing the plot and construction of movies and television shows is going to help you, because it's an apples and oranges comparison, you know, which should be obvious, though to a lot of people it isn't. And then then there's this guy, you know, I've seen this so many times in writing groups. I've even had a couple of people say it to me in real life, that, you know, I'm going to write a book, but I don't read books. It's common. And usually the person saying it, they want to write some kind of just highly embellished, i.e. bullshit, you know, memoir of their just oh so exciting life. And they'll say, oh yeah, you know, people have always told me I should write a book. Like, yeah, okay. And it's like, no, what you need to do, pal, is go and read a book. More than one book, actually. You should go and read several hundred books. And a few years down the road, when you've, you know, read all of that and looked them over and analyzed them and decided, you know, what works and what doesn't, maybe then, you know, you'll be fit to attempt writing your book. Though in the case of people like that, chances are you'll have moved on to some other endeavor by page 10 of the first book that you pick up. Because that's usually how it works. So honestly, if you're one of these people who just doesn't read and you're interested in writing a book, just do yourself a favor and do legitimate writers a favor, and just don't even bother, because you're absolutely wasting everyone's time, including your own. And that's the bottom line of point 4. If you don't read, don't try to write. You have no business doing so. So those are my 4 tips to evaluate whether you have what it takes to be a writer, or whether you're just wasting time, pretty much. And I'd like to say in conclusion that if I've implanted some doubts in your head, that might be a good thing. I believe everyone is talented at least one thing in life. You know, some people are lucky and they're good at a lot of things, but all of us are good at least something. You need to discover what that something is and pursue it. I mean, and not everyone, I mean, most people, in fact, are not cut out to be writers. So if you put aside your hubris and give yourself the benefit of an honest evaluation, you'll know heart and soul when comparing your writing to a successful author's, whether you have what it takes to become, you know, a successful author yourself. And if you do, you know, right on. But if you don't, you know, go find something to do. Find an endeavor that suits your specific skill set and chase the dream. I mean, none of us can be happy doing something that we're just not good at. And, you know, maybe you have the dream of becoming a writer, but you're just not good at it. You know, go find something you're good at. You're guaranteed to like it, you know, because you're good at it. It's you know, it's a no-brainer. So, you know, evaluate, you know, consider the attributes I mentioned, be honest with yourself, and figure out if writing is indeed something you have the talent and skill to pursue. If not, go do something else. I mean, it doesn't get much simpler than that, but those 4 traits, I mean, there are other traits too, but those are more optional than anything else. I mean, these I sat down and considered, you know, for a long time, at least a couple hours. You know, just, you know, what makes a successful writer, and that's what I came up with. Like I said, there are, you know, other minor traits that certainly help, but, you know, these are the biggies though, so keep them in mind and figure it out. I'd like to thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe, and check out the links to my Amazon author page and individual book listings below, as well as the link to the Gritty Tales writing group on Facebook, which is also linked. Write on and write hard, and we'll catch you next time. That is all.